Welcome to a bit of a bonus video from Westeros.org where we are going to be discussing the new casting for Season 5 that was revealed at San Diego Comic-Con, like they've done once or twice in the past, I think, and they released quite a list of new cast in contrast to last season where we only had a few new characters. This time we have quite a lot of them, and we wanted to discuss that in part because the press release that accompanied this shows that they're making quite a lot of changes.
They're making some real changes, and people have, a number of people contacted us and asked if we were going to make a video kind of discussing it and so on. So we decided, well, why not? We had other plans for videos. We decided to take a break, kind of enjoy our summer, a very warm, hot summer for those of you.
It's been too bloody hot to do anything.
Yeah,
and still too bloody hot.
It's still too bloody hot. You'll see we're going to be a little shiny, a little perspiration happening. But yeah, so let's just get right into it. I mean, on Friday they had the big panel with George, David and Dan, many of the actors, discussing this and that, and they showed a casting video, and along with it HBO sent us a release kind of detailing each of these new cast members. These are not all the cast members. There are more roles being cast, some of them significant, but these are a very good chunk of the new characters. I guess one of the things I want to discuss first is people say, well, hey, no Ironborn mentioned, no Northern Lords mentioned. I would not take this casting notice to be an absolute confirmation of anything writing what storylines are showing up this season. I think stuff like if they film the North in a block in, autumn and towards the end of the show, for example, the year for the show, it's not really possible that those actors will be cast a bit later, but the actors they've been casting now are some of the ones they need now. On the other hand, I think there's plenty of room for certain storylines. I mean, this season is going to be a Feast for Crows and a Dance of Dragons. Still, I don't think they're even going to be done with a Dance of Dragons at the end of this year. I think there's going to be some material from that one, but still going to be waiting for the next season. That said, I think what we're going to see is entirely possible that certain storylines will be brought in later than they are in the novels. For structure and, complexity, and it's sort of not having too much stuff going on in a single year. So, for example, to introducing Doran doesn't necessarily mean that season 6 won't see an introduction of Theon's uncles, for example. I am speculating here. Season 6, I think, is going to be the one that will really tell us what storylines aren't showing up.
Yeah, apparently they said something at the panel that by now it starts contracting a little bit.
They said that in season 3 that they were going to start contracting the show, and that didn't really. I don't take too much of that statement. I think if they mean they could mean contracting in the sense that storylines are coming together. So we're going to start pushing people together.
Doesn't necessarily mean they need less people, and
it doesn't mean they need less people. It just means they're going to start pushing people together, and so. And I mean, some of the reason the first season worked so well is, of course, you had everyone kind of grouped in a couple knots. So all the stories kind of revolved and reflected one another. Whereas in later seasons, as in the novels, it gets more complicated as everyone branches out. And you have a lot of stories that are sort of isolated from one another. So I think, and George has said this, we're going to start seeing with the 6th book, a lot of characters are going to start meeting one another again and leading towards the end. So, I would not make any assumptions about Ironborn or Northerners or anything until we see what happens in season 6.
On the other hand, the missing characters from Doran.
Well, we'll just even there, but we'll discuss that. But even there, I think there's room for stuff. So, all right, we'll start with our very first actor that they revealed. So, first one, the Prince of Doran, Doran Martell, the brother of Oberyn, played by Alexander Siddig.
Someone that we actually discussed among ourselves for Oberyn.
Yeah.
We thought he might have worked. We weren't sure that perhaps he'd have the right intensity.
I've seen him in a number of things besides. I mean, most fans of genre television know him from Deep Space Nine as Dr.
I mean,
Bashir.
it was during a rewatch. I think we were rewatching some of Deep Space Nine actually, and started thinking that, well, he wouldn't be bad, would he?
He's also been, of course, in Kingdom of Heaven. He had a supporting role in that one.
Very much liked him there.
Very much liked him there. Also, the George Clooney film Syriana, which I thought he was fantastic, and I think that one, where he plays an Arab sheikh, progressive, trying to improve, trying to balance, sort of the complex geopolitics of the region, and very tragic character. And I think one that made me feel like, he can do a gravitas, he can do the seriousness of it.
Maybe he is a better pick for Doran than we had thought for Oberyn, because there I could have seen him perhaps lacking some of the edge.
I think edge might have been, he was always, he could be quite charming in the Deep Space Nine episodes.
Quite light and humorous.
Yeah, where we had the Hollow Suite, where he would do the whole sort of James Bond pastiche thing, and play that sort of role. It was very funny, very cute. Yeah. And he had that charm. But I don't know. As Doran, I think he's an excellent choice. I think he's also... I recall thinking that he wasn't going to be Oberyn for sure when I think I heard that he was cast as in Da Vinci's Demons, which... aside, he's one of the. I only watched one episode, and he was like the only. He was the only good thing in the episode, in my opinion. I'm sure. Pilot episodes are tough. If you're a fan of a show, I'm not holding judgment. It didn't catch my interest. I'm sure it improved, but in that episode, I think I found him intriguing, where he was played a sort of dissolute, sort of Persian Arab mystic involved sort of deep, sort of secret.
Yeah, I don't think
history,
I even managed to watch through the first episode.
So again, I think he could do very well. Siddig is, of course, half British. I think he has an English mother, and his father is Sudanese. And actually, he is nephew to Malcolm McDowell on his mother's side, which is interesting. And he is also descended of the Mahdi of Sudan, who I think gave the British Empire some trouble back in the 19th century. He's Sudanese Arab, I guess.
We'll have to go and watch was it Lawrence after Arabia or before? Or
I think it's Lawrence. It's the old I think it was a BBC or maybe ITV thing, sort of a reality sort of docudrama.
Is he playing the Faisal?
I don't know if he plays Faisal, but it's the one of the earliest roles on television, I think, for Ray Fiennes.
Yeah, this is the reason that I would want to watch that one.
Lawrence after a dangerous man, I think. Yes. Also, so yeah, he's been in that. He's been working a lot of years, so I think he's actually. I think the main thing, even age-wise, he's fine. The main thing is, I guess, Doran of a novel is a character, and I think they even mention it actually on the show, his gout.
Yes.
And of course, one tends to think of gout as a disease for people who are overweight, people who eat and drink too much.
I mean, I think it is mentioned that he's it's not just his feet that are swollen, he is swollen all over.
But I don't know if that means he's overweight or not. But regardless, I mean, so my mental image of Doran was not.
No. I mean, we discussed like Edward James Olmos.
Edward James Olmos has
been our
go-to for who we would have loved to see as Doran. I think he would have been a fantastic. He is older, of course, but he would have been a fantastic gravitas.
But I'm actually warming to this one after thinking a little bit about it.
No, I think he's going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
So no complaints.
Hopefully they
here,
actually, there are some of our absolute favorite bits from the novels are in the Feast for Crows. There's a chapter, the Captain of Guards, or is it the Guards?
The Captain of Guards, which is or is it Captain of the Guard? I can never remember it either.
No.
It switches back and forth, but it's got the most beautiful opening scene of any of the novels, and it's
one of those where I like to think that this is on the level of another one of my favorite authors, Guy Gabriel Kay. That chapter, and actually a lot of Feast for Crows, reminds me so much of his writing, and I just love that chapter. I recently finished a reread of A Feast for Crows, and I don't know that they'll do that justice.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think let's go on to the next one, I guess. And then we have, now this one is the first sort of
major change.
Major change or controversial one. It's Toby Sebastian, a young British actor, as Trystane Martell, who is, I will quote directly, Trystane Martell is Prince Doran's son and heir to Doran. His father betrothed him to Myrcella Baratheon as part of the alliance offered by Tywin Lannister, then Hand of the King. Now, there's a factual error.
Because Tyrion offered that alliance.
It's Tyrion, not Tywin. And second is the fact that he's heir.
In the novels, Doran has 3 children. His eldest is a daughter, Arianne. Doran, in the novels at least, has gender-blind primogeniture. We don't know if that is the case
on the show.
Given that last season they have Oberyn talking about going to King's Landing or to the Rock, Castle Rock with his father rather than his mother. His mother was the Princess of Dorne, she was the ruler. Their father was just a consort. It's possible they decided to change away from the gender-blind primogeniture. Which is incredibly dumb.
I don't get it. I don't at all.
It's one of the things that sets Dorne apart. It's one of the things that makes it a more... it's difficult to say progressive because it's just a sort of a quirk of their history that means that women have a better position in Dorne than elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a matter that they had a social revolution or anything like that. It's
their culture is more egalitarian regarding gender issues. Not absolutely egalitarian.
No.
You'll find no female knights that I can think of in Dorne, for example.
I mean, the Fate wouldn't.
No, but I mean, there's no... But that said, yes, it is more... So we don't know what they're doing. And the other thing is, of course, is in the second season. I believe it's the 3rd episode where Tyrion is laying his little trap to try and find out who's telling Cersei stories.
Yeah.
When he's talking to Myrcella, he says, I intend to marry Myrcella to the Prince of Dorne's youngest son.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I had completely forgotten about that one.
Yep. So
they
then
retconned that, basically.
Here's the thing. Because of the error, it seems to me that it's entirely possible that someone in the PR department may have made an assumption or may have gotten some confused information or some incorrect information. And but it's not strictly accurate. I've actually reached out to HBO to have them check with the production and confirm that Trystane is intended to be the heir. I think it's entirely possible they will retcon things. I mean, I'm fairly sure they've done it before. I can't.
Yeah, I believe there was something. I can't.
Yeah, I can't come up with a specific instance, but I'm fairly sure. Well, for example, I mean, the obviously this isn't decided, but if the Ironborn somehow end up never becoming more of a part of a story, like specifically Balon's brothers. I mean, in the first season, Tyrion tells it was your uncles who did this. And they're never mentioned again.
So if it turns out not to have any uncles, then well, that's a change.
I think people said that and I don't recall this specifically myself, but in the first season, Euron and Victarion were listed on the Game of Thrones sort of site in the family tree for the Greyjoys. And after that season, they sort of disappeared.
Okay.
So someone decided, well, we may not actually end up using them, and then we may have to excise them. So little retcons happen. So it's entirely possible, but it leaves the question to me that maybe they aren't doing it. But maybe what they're going to do is leave it so that they don't really specify any further than he's Doran's son.
No.
And you might find out next season, oh, by the way, he's got an older brother.
And an older sister.
Or an older sister.
It's a little awkward, though, when it's taking place in Dorne. Presumably some of this, they're not all going to be in King's Landing or anything.
Yeah, but it's so easy for them to just kind of not mention something and then...
Yeah.
Especially if they don't make anything of it. I mean, obviously...
I know, I suppose it is a TV convention that you can slip in siblings here.
Absolutely. It's, George himself cited this a lot of the Ralph Cifaretto thing from The Sopranos, where, you come into, I think it was the 3rd season, so this Ralph guy shows up who's a captain, who's an important figure in the Sopranos mob organization. Never heard of him before. No. Never mentioned. And suddenly he's this major piece, and you just have to assume, well, he's always been around, and we just...
It's just that when you're talking about here... family and dynastic things and all of that.
Well, why they don't need to talk about dynastic things? That's the thing. I mean, I think the Dornish chapters in the Future Crows very much turn a bit on a dynastic question. They don't need to have that question. They might decide to drop that. Now, and it's one thing I want to discuss after we're sort of done with our Dornish characters, because we're first going to go over Dornish characters, is the big omission.
Yeah.
And what it says about the broader story that they're telling in Dorne, because I have a feeling that what they're doing...
It looks like they're going to be telling a different story.
A different story, and I'll say it, I'm concerned it's going to be a more superficial story. But it's going to be a story that... Because to me, the beauty of the Dornish material in A Feast for Crows is the pathos and the sort of the family saga, not saga, but the family dynamics and the drama of a complicated family situation.
It turns very much on certain facets of Doran's character and choices that he has made and how that has impacted the people around him.
And his children. And I think, and it's one of the themes of novels. I mean, you have it, people... Tyrion, I think is what I think it's about. It all comes back to our fathers. Yeah. You know, our history, our whole lives have been decided by our fathers and what they did and what our ancestors did. And it's a big part of the Dornish thing. So I'm a bit concerned.
I mean, there is the last line of the last chapter that takes place in Dorne. In A Feast for Crows.
Well, yeah. Let's leave that for when we actually get into the...
Yeah, well, but yes, I don't think we're getting that one, or if we're getting it, it's...
Well, I imagine we're getting it. I can't imagine that we're not getting it, to be honest.
It's going to mean a lot less.
I mean, probably.
A lot less.
Yeah. Next we will discuss...
Well, we barely discussed Trystane.
Oh, we barely did discuss Trystane. let's I'm sorry, we got on a big tangent here.
He is quite a bit older.
Yes, he's quite young.
He's, 13, 14 in the novel?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, so is Myrcella. They've aged her up.
Well, she's 2 years younger, I think.
Yeah.
In the novels than him. They've aged them both up, they sort of tried to age Myrcella up from the actress they had previously playing her. Not the one that they now...
I think they actually cast a younger actress.
Yes, and she definitely doesn't look older, but...
No.
Anyway, they went with someone else for when the role was going to be featured more. It's probably going to be a bit of a romance storyline. They've certainly looks like they've cast Trystane as eye candy for the younger generation.
Maybe so. I could see that it's a sort of Romeo and Juliet thing. Maybe I don't know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
But he's definitely not much of a figure in the novel. He is very much a tertiary character.
He's never on screen. He's talked about.
He's talked about. He's never actually on screen. So he's obviously increased his role. They maybe... See, the thing is, it's hard to imagine that he's playing the part of his brother, Quentin, in the novel. That's not...
No.
Not now.
No.
Maybe if they're merging things, they could do it for the next season, I guess. But I don't think this season.
No.
Could he be playing the role of the omitted character, his eldest sister, Arianne, in some fashion? Yes, but it feels...
really weird.
Strange to consider. It feels a lot more superficial.
Because her motivations very much have to do with...
She has a very powerful motivation,
yes.
I think. And they're complicated and they're interesting for us and for many other readers. Not everyone felt the same. I believe it's Times critic James Ponovozic who's repeatedly kind of made it plain that the Dornish material didn't interest him. Which is fine. Not everyone has to like it, but I'm saying that there are people who do, and I think there are good reasons for it. And
I think a lot of people just basically reacted to the idea of, because most of the ones who don't like the Dornish material don't much like the Ironborn material either. So it is largely the introduction of focus on two new groups of people. And they sort of, I want to stick with my Starks and Lannisters and the stuff that I've invested time in already. So I think the difference is largely that those who took a liking to the Dornish material and the Ironborn material, I would argue that a lot of the time those are readers who've taken a liking in the world as a whole and they had already looked at the appendices and read and been interested. Oh, these families sound really interesting. I wonder when I get to see more of them.
Yeah, I recall, I think you or other people saying Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper.
Yeah, just that thing. Just that,
there was something there.
If you're being called the Red Viper, that, that sounds awesome, right? So you already have I mean, by the time that they're mentioned, I mean, we've already had, early on, obviously Elia mentioned. So for me, finally getting to see Martell was like, wow, we've been waiting for it.
So they've really, I think,
I mean, they're definitely doing something very different with him.
I think it's very likely they're going to do some elements from the novel, but he's going to be playing a more integral role. I don't think he's going to be a tertiary character that you just see and then everyone else is having the story. I think because of the next casting, we'll actually discuss her next, or recasting, I should say. It's clear, I think, that they are doing something with them. And that would be Myrcella Baratheon is now played by Nell Tiger Free. Nell Tiger Free. Interesting name. That's a pretty name. She is... Let me see what they've added. She's a guest in War to Prince Doran, betrothed to his son, but her position become tenuous with the death of Oberyn Martell, the prince's brother. Obviously implying that there are people who feel that in Doran who are saying, well, we should, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
We should kill her because it's their fault that, Oberyn was killed by the mountain or whatever.
We don't actually get the sense that, I mean...
No, there's never any talk of avenging themselves by killing Myrcella in particular. It's not. Now the recasting, Amy Richardson, of course.
I mean, we know that. I should say that from the first chapter that we have in Dorne, that point of view character, who, by the way, is not appearing in this season. It would appear, or did they have an Oris Oakheart already?
They showed a Kingsguard knight accompanying her,
but he doesn't seem to be cast. So, but one of the chapters in Dorne are from his point of view, and he does mention that the situation is quite tense in Sunspear, but he doesn't actually think directly about any threat to, like, that he thinks about Myrcella being in danger or anything like that.
It's not really a thing. So, Amy Richardson, of course, I think got a lot of fan interest in sort of her continuing. There were rumors that they're recasting and so on. I don't know the full story, but obviously when she was cast initially, I mean, the first season, she was basically an extra of like a line, and she did great, in particular in the second season. I really think I liked her scene. Wasn't it they were having dinner with Cersei and Sansa?
Oh yes,
So I thought that was interesting, but yeah, I think they just decided to go with someone with perhaps more acting experience overall, I guess, despite being a little younger, I think. So, but the recasting tells me they're doing something with that story.
Yeah, and they're planning to feature her more. She's not just going to be basically an extra. So
not really a lot to say about it otherwise.
I mean, she figures in the books, obviously, in the chapters. I mean, it should be said for those who haven't read A Feast for Crows that there's not a lot of Dornish chapters. There's 4 chapters. They are from a total of 3 point of views.
2 point of views.
3 point of views, right?
3. Oh, you're right. Sorry. I blanked for a second.
Yes.
No, I can't count.
But quite a lot happens, and quite a lot of things are revealed. I suspect that they'll probably be pulling from off-screen material, and are going to have to, invent material for Myrcella, certainly, because it doesn't look like, even if she's going to be featured, that she's going to be in much of the same position.
Yeah. So it'll be. It's
hard to speculate, but
it's hard to speculate right now about this. It's an interesting thing that they're going to feature her more. And it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people would. I mean, I think I can say that it was revealed to me years back that, I mean, David and Dan are apparently quite a fan of Dornish material and of Dorne in general. They actually enjoyed it.
What were they a fan of? Maybe it was just the tits.
There aren't that many tits.
Well, in the sense that they can play up the.
I don't know. I don't want to psychoanalyze them. Basically, I just knew for a long time when people said, "Oh, we're not going to include Dorne. I hated the material. I hope they hate." I thought, well, no. If they can get Dorne in, I think they're probably going to try and get it in because they thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
That said,
it's just that the look from some of the casting. It looks like
it's not just the look from the casting. I'm not really concerned about that aspect. It's more of the. And we'll get into more to discuss the omitted character. who seems to be omitted anyways.
Yeah.
How, again, I feel like they liked it, but they liked it for not the reasons that I liked it. And that's okay, but again, I'm concerned of the superficiality, and they have started filming. I don't read the scripts. I don't know what the scripts are saying. I just have what's in front of me and sort of the little rumors and little tidbits one picks up. What people send or what people tell me or what we read elsewhere, and I'm just
that leaks here and
there, and I'm concerned about the meat of it, because to me the meat of it is really about that omitted character. Yeah. So and their relationship to Doran Martell, and I think so that gives me pause. But I mean, at the same time, I can understand if they're somehow seeing they need to start compressing things, and that character opens too many possibilities, so better to go with someone else. But we'll discuss that more in a bit. Let's go. And next is Areo Hotah, the
one
captain.
of the point of views for Doran.
The first point of view character, the captain, the eponymous captain of the guard.
Seems cast so far, basically, of the three Dornish point of views.
This is absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, the omitted character is one of the point of views for two of those chapters, and the other character, Aura's Oakheart, the Kingsguard Knight, is a point of view as well. And not cast, but Areo is cast, played by actor Deobia Oparei, who is, I believe, he's British, but obviously I'm sorry, I don't know what ethnic descent. He's some sort of African country. I think something tells me Nigeria or Uganda, but because I read something and I don't quite remember. I apologize about that. An experienced actor, been doing a number of things. Actually, let me quickly look that up. Obviously, the big thing about him.
In the meantime, while you're looking that up, I can go on one of my usual rants of artificially inserting diversity into the story. Now, because Areo Hotah in the books is from Norvos, one of the most northern free city.
Not the most northern.
One of the northern free cities. He is most definitely not black.
No, that's. I mean, the other thing.
The Norvoshi are of part Valyrian descent, like many of the free cities. Yeah. And in the books, Prince Doran's wife is from Norvos as well. He accompanied her when she moved to Dorne as a guardsman. So the three children that Doran has in the novels are half Norvoshi, and they most certainly are not half black.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, is Areo Hotah in the novels is a character he is a slave soldier. I mean, he's not a slave anymore, I guess, but he feels an obligation to continue to serve Martel. There's some complicated stuff with Doran and his wife as well, actually, which adds to sort of the tragedy and pathos of what's going on there. I had no idea if we're going to touch on it at all.
I mean, they could again solve this by saying, well, he was a Summer Islander who got sold to Norvos. If they allow that, because it is a bit of a religious slavery.
I wouldn't care.
No,
they probably won't.
That was more of a speculation on in the novels. Would the Norvoshi take non-Norvoshi as their slave soldiers?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, they could solve that by making him a Summer Islander.
Or Basilic Isles, or something like that.
On the other hand, they should probably have changed his name, perhaps.
Areo,
maybe that can pass.
That passes Hotah, but maybe given to him. I don't know. To me, the main thing is, I'm not even sure if you're even going to mention Norvos.
No, probably not.
I don't know.
But my problem is actually, if you think about it, they're so insistent on inserting diversity into the story, which I think is a problem when you have pre-existing material.
May I interject and suggest that what should be noted is, there were casting call leaks.
Yes.
And I think it starts with the casting call, where
because they specifically asked for a black actor. They didn't just have open casting for Areo and saying that whoever is best for the role. They specifically wanted a black actor to up that quota or whatever on the show. They can't. They apparently see, and I fully agree with that, they can't just go and insert someone into one of the main noble houses in Westeros. That would be very anachronistic and very out of place. So they have to look at the peripheral roles. In this case, they look at a role that comes out very stereotypical. The strong, silent, devoted guardsman. Yeah. Doesn't it become very sort of token black character.
Yeah, I just think of South Park. Token. I love Token.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's just the fact that they feel really strongly. Okay, we have to do this because of whatever. I don't agree with that. I don't think that is necessary when you have a pre-existing material. It's entirely different if you're doing it from scratch, and if you're doing something set in the modern day or whatever, then you should already be representative. In this case, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's silly pressure from something or whatever. But especially when they get relegated to the fact, well, these are the only roles where we can squeeze people in. And then it's so typical. Sort of... Like, we just watched Penny Dreadful, which we really liked, but it very much has a black character as the mysterious, devoted guardsman.
Yeah, servant man who sort of, it's
a very traditional role.
It's a very traditional kind of role, yes. And
so I don't know that adds much.
I don't know if it adds much to the diversity of it, like having.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were so many people.
It's not a groundbreaking role.
It's funny. So many people wanted to see Strong Bellas on the show. Like, there's a character that many people love who isn't really very stereotypical to me. I mean, who's fun and kind of amusing and kind of just wacky. And I felt that would have been a great one. And I think there's another, like a character like Brown Ben Plum.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, maybe they'll cast him, maybe next season. Fantastic. That's an interesting character.
Yeah.
I think that would have been really interesting to see.
Shrewd mercenary who's,
Yeah. Gives us one of the great lines, there are old sellswords and there are bold sellswords, but there are no bold sellswords.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I mean, they had an opportunity, actually, with Dorn. They could have cast, at the very least, someone who was half black, because in the novels, one of Oberyn's daughters is half Summer Islander. Now, that character is not in Dorn, but since they have mixed, as we're going to see soon, they have mixed up the Sand Snakes in a weird way already. They could just have switched her origins to one of the ones that they're in fact going to feature.
That wouldn't have been a problem at all.
Yeah.
I would have been entirely fine with that. I thought that would have... Because one of the things that I kind of got a little... 2 of the 3 actresses are kind of samey looking, and nothing... and the third one at least is East Asian, and so she stands out as being more distinctive. But I kind of like the fact that with the Sand Snakes, each one looks quite distinct. They sort of have...
It's a bit of fantasy genetics. They're all taking after their mothers, basically.
Except for a couple of features. Their eyes and their widow's peaks.
Yeah.
Come from Oberyn.
Yeah. So
it is fantasy. It is, but it would have been interesting to see like each of these very different looking women are all his daughters.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting. So as far as Areo, I mean, Areo being present is interesting. And I don't quite... His role is he is the witness of the first chapter. He is the narrator, but he is not. He is the watcher. He watches, and he doesn't. And then he does play a role in sort of a violent event. And I expect he's going to do the same thing, but I think he's going to be a pretty minor character.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Sand Snakes. They're next. I was debating whether to just kind of do them all in one go, but let's at least mention them. Jessica Henwick, we're playing Nymeria, Nym Sand. She's described as the second eldest of Oberyn's daughters.
That at least is correct.
Yes,
so
her
far.
mother was an Eastern noblewoman. Well, that's correct.
Yeah.
Brought her up to be cultured and graceful. Okay. And deadly with whip. No. Okay.
First of all, her mother in the books is from Volantis.
She was a lady of high birth, aka Valyrian.
Yes. Nymeria in the novels is very pale.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. But basically she should look like a Valyrian, aka like Dany with black hair and black eyes.
Yeah.
She's got the black eyes, she's got the widow's peak. If anyone in the Westeros Essos continuum looks
East Asian.
Asian, we're talking like Yi-Ti.
Yi-Ti is definitely inspired by sort of Imperial China.
Yeah,
so I
the idea that Oberyn was off knocking up women in Yi-Ti.
I don't think that's necessary. I mean, maybe he did. He did travel in the East.
Yeah.
I don't
Well, I certainly hope they don't try to pass her off as Valentine.
I doubt it. I mean, why would... I don't know, but disrespect to world building. Okay, from ET, fine. Maybe a noblewoman who was on an embassy to the West.
Not that I think there are noble women in ET who teach their daughters how to use a whip.
No, the whip thing is there.
Yeah. First of all, it belongs to Oparei in the novels.
Yeah.
She is the warrior, outright warrior of the 8 sand snakes. Well, actually, one of the younger ones apparently likes to swing about a morning star, and one uses a lance. But Oparei is the only one who has a track record of fighting people.
It's funny, but I mean, Obarei's weapon, we'll discuss from more, is the spear. Specifically, that's the one... Yeah. Maybe we should discuss the sand snakes in general first.
Yes, I think we should.
I realize the sand snakes, the daughters of Oberyn. Yeah. And as far as anyone knows, he's only ever had daughters. He's claimed them all. They all come, almost all. The first several come from different mothers.
The first 4.
The first 4. Oparei came from a whore in Old Town. Nymeria is a Volantine noblewoman. Then we have Taini, who is going to be played by... Let me get that here for you. I managed to...
We might as well mention who's playing Oparei as well, then.
Yes, Oparei is being played by Keisha Castle-Hughes. I know her from The Whale Rider, where she was quite young then. She was fantastic in that role, actually. And I'm sort of excited by her presence. But when I first heard about... we had hints. There was a paper in New Zealand that sort of...
We thought she might be Nym, right?
I thought Nymeria, maybe. Yeah. So, because Oparei is sort of coarse-featured, kind of heavier set, common.
Yeah.
And you could buy, I guess, from the description, but she's strong enough and capable enough to defeat men in battle.
Tall, kind of sinew and brawny, tough.
And
she's not pretty. She's got, kind of mousy brown hair, I think, and...
But she's, Keisha Castle-Hughes, I mean, given the wushu stuff, I'm sure they can find a stunt double to do all the wushu stuff that they're going to have her do. But it wasn't really my mental image, so it was a bit of a surprise. I mean, it's nice to have her as part of a show. And then Taini, played by Rosabell Laurenti Sellers, who is, I think, Italian, or maybe half Italian. I know on IMDb it was saying, but she actually did live in Italy for a number of years, and in her casting video, she gives Laurenti a very Italian pronunciation. So, she's played Taini and described. Now she's another change. I mean, Taini is the daughter of a septa that Oberyn seduced, presumably. On the show, she's actually, I guess, the eldest of Valoria's daughters by Oberyn, which is quite a change.
Because in the novels,
well, I mean,
the first...
Doesn't this then mean that basically Eloria has had 6 children?
Yeah, probably if they keep him, because I mean,
they can go with the idea. Well, sometimes he had children for Eloria, sometimes he had children for women.
Yeah, which isn't the case in the novels, basically, because he ends up having the 4 eldest, Oparei, Nymeria, Taini, and Sorella. Sorella is the half-Summer Islander who is not in Doran in the novels, so that's probably why she's not appearing, and we suspect that storyline is probably going entirely out the window. I have a strong
feeling that they may be dropping that.
And then the 4 youngest, which is Elia, Obella, Lorisa, and Dorea, probably not in right order, but at least I remember them.
Yeah.
Elia is the oldest, anyway, of Elaria's daughters. Yeah. I mean, that's why he named the eldest Elia.
Yeah. And he seems to have settled down with her after that.
Well, settle down.
They like having other playmates, but it seems that
he's not picking up kids from all over.
I kind of wonder, has he been careful not to knock up more women, or has he been lucky not to knock up more women, or has it been that he may have, collecting. But he stopped collecting them?
Yeah, because there's this little thing that he's kind of baby collecting.
Yeah.
Because he knocks up Oparei. I said she's... doesn't knock up Oparei, but Obarei's mother. She's that would be being bad. He knocks her mother up when he's like 11 or 12.
Yeah, that's the thing. He starts young.
Yes, and he's like in Old Town, and somehow finds out that this prostitute got knocked up, and goes back there later, and picks up his daughter. Yep. In this case, they have Oparei as the daughter of a Dornish peasant woman, apparently, who caught his eye or something. So
it certainly has a real impact on. It's part of the complexity of. So I mean, we said Oparei is one of the few that really stands out a bit because she has this whole.
I mean, the four oldest. I mean, Nym and Taini are very loosely sketched out. They're very much their looks and their distinctive looks and their distinctive skills that Oberyn gave them, because he sort of gave each of his daughter their own weapon.
Yeah.
To sort of help them out. There's a quote from Arianne, I think she thinks in one of the chapters, that, he had told his daughters that, you can get married or not, whether you want or not, but if you get yourself a fool or a brute, don't come running to me. I've given you the tools to take care of that yourself. So basically, if you get a bad husband, you murder him yourself.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting. Yeah, but he has a very
interesting parenting style.
Very sink or swim style of parenting.
But Nym and Taini are very loosely fleshed out.
Yeah.
Oparei and then Sarella, because Sarella features a bit more, are the ones that have more character, and Oparei we're getting it second hand. We're getting it through Areo, actually. He's thinking about some of the things that Oberyn has said about his daughter, and she's a bit more bitter.
She's quite bitter about the fact that she's
lowborn, she's not good looking.
And she's the poorest daughter.
Yeah.
And she has a big chip on her shoulder about Old Town, where her mother was a prostitute. Yeah. She has a lot of issues, basically.
And with this casting and the change of the backstory,
I think they're barely going to touch any of it. I mean, I'm sure we'll give the basic story, like when he came for her, and because it's a nice little story about how her mother wept, and he told her to choose. Do you want to use a woman's weapons? Tears, or do you want to use my spear? Do you want to use a spear? And so it's a nice bit, and I think
they'll probably use that, but it's going to have.
But the whole her hatred of Old Town and her the big chip on her shoulder, I think that's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Or not, maybe, I don't know.
And I mean, Taini, as they've made her Ilaria's daughter, where she should be the daughter of
She's fiercer than she looks, especially
septa.
Especially for twin daggers.
Yeah.
Taini looks very sweet. She's blonde. She dresses very modestly. She's obviously learned in the faith. She comes off as half a septa, but
she must have probably spent some time with her mother, perhaps at a mother house or something.
Something she may have started
her
life
before he picked her up,
but now she has her father's appetites, at this libido, and she has his knowledge of poisons.
Yeah.
So I find that strange. Like, why knives?
The daggers are in fact what Nym uses.
Nymeria has, and she doesn't use it. I mean, the actress actually shows the daggers.
Yeah.
And she has these long, big daggers fighting. Whereas Nym, I think, was supposed to have a lot of sort of
concealed
little weapons and slice your throat.
Very fantasy.
Very fantasy, but having comes with concealed weapons.
Yeah.
She's not a knife fighter, and
No.
maybe she knows probably how to basically use it, but I don't think he imagines her as some sort of knife fighter who comes in.
A duelist.
No. So.
Well, there is that mention from Arianne about Dornish women dueling bare-breasted.
Yeah, allegedly. I don't know.
I think that one actually came from Blackadder with the joke about dueling bare-breasted with an 8-pound baby on it.
Traditional Highland fashion,
I just have a sense that one came from.
Yeah. Jessica Henwick, as I said, East Asian. So E.T., the whip thing, it just sounds strange. They
just wanted to make all of them, it seems, more physical
warriors. They're all mini Oberyns.
Yeah.
I guess. And I think.
And sexing them all up.
Probably. I certainly dropping the innocent.
Yeah.
I mean, they say she's fiercer than she looks, so I don't know how innocent she's supposed to be on the show, but I just don't think they're gonna give the same vibe. And I when I look at the actors, I look at what's written about them, and like the actors showing the knives she's got, and the fact that they all have physical weapons to fight with, and I just think
they made a good comment on Reddit.
Someone on Reddit was concerned about the loss of Taini, and I don't have any particular feeling for Taini, but someone else responded, well, it's sort of like they took the 3 sand snakes, combined them into one character, and then cast them 3 times. And they have a little variation, different mothers and different weapons. But it does start to feel kind of samey. So I hope they kind of, and this is what I mean by the superficiality of it, because I would much rather have lost all the sand snakes and kept Arianne Martel.
Yeah, or had one of them.
Or had one of them, or even two of them. I mean, they're casting 3 characters. Why can't they cast just 2 of them and have...
Yeah.
So I'm at a loss, because for me, Arianne is the heart of...
Yeah.
Is the way we get into the pathos and the tragedy and the complexity.
We know in the books that, we're going to see more of Nim and Taini in the books.
Oh, we're going to see more of Arianne as well. So
yeah.
I don't know. I find it very difficult, and I'm concerned. Okay, I'd be very happy to be proved
and
wrong.
Also, given that they are making Taini Ilaria's daughter, they're probably keeping Ilaria around.
And I'm concerned about what that means in terms of how we're going to use her. I hope they use her appropriately, but I'm concerned that they won't.
Yeah.
Because we do see Ilaria in the Dance of Dragons after the death of Oberyn and so on, and we get her perspective on what's happened. And let's just say she plays a role similar to Catelyn does in the novels, but note that this is a role that Catelyn did not play on the show. They changed her there as well, so they have a track record of kind of thinking it's cooler to have vengeful women than to have women who say, look, like we have to kind of put an end to it.
Enough is enough, and, being the voice of, trying to be the voice of reason, but that's not cool.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So Keisha, I don't know the work of Henwick or Sellers. As I said, Castle-Hughes, I saw she's from New Zealand. I guess I think, by the look, she's part Maori.
I think so, yeah.
The Whale Rider, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's a fantastic little film. Which
doesn't make sense very much, by the way, having her part Maori, but it does. I mean, it's not.
Well, she looks.
Yeah, she could pass because she's supposed to be fully Dornish.
Yeah. And Sellers, Sellers is kind of funny because she's from what we saw, she was quite pale. It's funny because she's Italian or part Italian, so she's Mediterranean. That's right. This is like you'd think they'd want to cast people who kind of look in the range, but on the other hand, bronzer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean Trystane looks very not even.
He's very British. I think. I mean, obviously.
They said they wanted to stay with Hispanic for the Martells.
That's my biggest surprise. I was going to comment. I was kind of hopeful for someone's. Spain has many fine actors. I would have loved to have seen a Spanish actor or two in some of the roles, and and given that they're filming in Spain, you would have thought that maybe they would have.
Yeah.
And no, apparently not.
I mean, I don't know if he is at all Hispanic Hispanic. The actor for Trystane, but I don't.
Well, the name doesn't suggest it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
It certainly doesn't look it.
No, I mean, George has said, and obviously we've discussed it before, we'll just briefly say again, the Dornish are sort of, George thinks Mediterranean, he thinks sort of Southern European, he's mentioned Italy, Southern Spain,
Greece,
Portugal. Well, also you could say, sort of North Africa, Berbers and so on. So, so I would have looked for someone who's, olive skin, more like me, brown. You can see me, it's summer, I get progressively darker.
Yeah.
So I was surprised by how pale she is, but maybe she's just been avoiding getting a tan. It's been brutal in Europe here. I came here from Florida and Miami actually, and I hated the cold, and I was quite used to the warm weather, which we didn't get that often. And now I'm afraid I'm adapted the other way, and I'm not used to this, especially so humid right now. Yeah. So not used to it at all. But let's move. So that kind of finishes off Doran. Let's talk about the bigger mission.
Yeah.
And that bigger mission is, well, there's technically 2 bigger missions. I mean, one of them is Quentyn Martell. We don't, again...
That would be Trystane's older brother, the middle child of Doran's.
Yeah. He appears in the novels in the Dance of Dragons. So
he's mentioned in A Feast for Crows. We get some hints as to what he's going to be doing.
I think, again, and Arianne. I mean, Arianne Martell, the eldest, the heir to Doran. She's the one that bothers me more. Okay. I think, I'll say this first, I think there is room for Arianne and even Quentyn as entries to season 6. If the economy of the story made it for them easier to go with this set of characters instead of that set of characters. And particularly Quentyn, Quentyn for sure could have been done as a season 6 character.
Yeah, but
now I feel Arianne. When I say this, I admit.
Because if they're putting in Arianne later, what are they doing now.
Well, why aren't they using her now if they're going to have the possibility?
Quentin, I can see that works. His story is a bit separate. He only gets referred to in A Feast for Crows as a setup for what he's going to be doing in A Dance with Dragons. So he can be introduced later. But Arianne, that should be the story now. Her is the story that was one of the stories that made George skip, I guess, the 5-year gap.
No, he felt the 5-year,
Because basically there was supposed to be, as you probably know, many of you, that there was supposed to be a gap between the end of Storm of Swords and the beginning of then A Dance with Dragons. A Feast for Crows didn't exist. Basically he was going to recap those 5 years sort of in flashbacks, but he felt that there needed to be more immediate reactions to certain storylines.
Like Doran in particular.
Yeah, I think Brienne's story is the other one.
Oberyn, like the reaction of Doran to Oberyn's
Now, there
death.
was actually an interesting thing. I caught a little bit of the panel that you looked at, where he talked about killing off Catherine. Was it Catherine?
Catherine of Beauty
on Beauty and the Beast. Where he said something, I didn't actually watch the whole thing, but he said something about how the network finally allowed them, but they wanted to get it over with very quickly, as in they didn't want to dwell on it.
Yeah.
And he seemed to feel that that was a problem. I sort of got the hint. Because I think he very much feels that when you kill a character and when you do significant things, there should be ramifications.
Yeah.
And actually, for my own part, I remember being very glad when we got A Feast for Crows. Because I thought that, I thought it was very upsetting that he killed off Oberyn like he did. And then, like, you're just going to go 5 years and you're not going to dwell at all and you're not going to have any reactions to an episode that had quite a lot of impact. Because you certainly had a lot of reactions to the Red Wedding. You had people reacting in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah.
As it turns out, then this is part of the reason I love Feast for Crows. It is a book about aftermath. It is a book dealing with all the issues. It is a book following up all the things that happened, all the big horrible things that happened.
Yeah.
And very much lets you process and come back down from them.
Yeah, I could see that as an...
So the Dornish chapters are all very much in the shadow of Oberyn's death, because that sort of that very much drives what happens. And how that the sort of reactions that, because we learned that Dorne is reacting very strongly, and that there's a big contrast between what Doran is apparently doing and what the people of Dorne want him to do. So, Arianne, her storyline takes place in that moment, in that aftermath. That is when she seizes an opportunity that comes from things that she has learned about her father and about her future.
Yeah.
So I can't see how they can do that later. It is for that moment. That's where it happens.
I think, for me, despite my saying that I think there's room for Arianne showing up later, I think if she shows up later, she's going to have lost a lot of those elements. Because I think she'll be used for not completely unrelated, but a sort of another new entry into a story from A Dance of Dragons, where we know that Arianne's going to have a role in that story.
She's just going to have that role, basically.
I think that's what comes to mind for me as a possibility. Because it doesn't work so well to use Trystane in that role. So it seems to me like if they are to me, it all turns on when season 6 comes around.
Yeah.
That is the make or break time for when they decide absolutely firmly 100% how many seasons. Yeah. Don't let anyone else tell you that they've decided with 100% certainty, but it's only 7 seasons. They have not. As late as February, they had opened the possibility of this year when they were done with mapping, when they were starting to write the scripts. They said 7 or 8, or at least 7. So the possibility exists, but a lot of it is financial, a lot of it is personal. A lot of it is contractual.
They are still starting to look a bit worn out, aren't they?
They are looking worn out. They have aged, and I think there is an element of like, and they keep bringing up. I mean, how exhausted they are.
I mean, I thought they were going to look a bit fresher on the panel mappings at the start of the season, but they haven't recovered from that.
They do a lot of work.
Yes, they do. I mean, for all the complaints that I have, obviously they are working very hard. They're not slacking. That's not the problem.
No. I mean, I think sometimes that maybe the problem might feel that maybe they're doing too much and they're not giving themselves the time to sort of sit back and let other people handle. I don't know. I don't want to go into that so much, but it's just, I think 6th season is where they absolutely have the decision. They will know when they start breaking down the 6th season how many years ago. They can't go and say, well, yeah, we'll save that for the 7th season to decide, because that kind of throws away the whole benefit of having a roadmap from George. They have to kind of give themselves 2 years in which we're setting up the finish. So 6th season we'll know for sure. And I think if they decide, if HBO says, you know what, this is still a huge hit, the numbers are as good as ever, the actors are amendable, we're amendable, here's the money for it, let's go 8. And then it really comes down to if David and Dan want to do it, or if they're saying, well, you know, we don't want to, but maybe, you know, Frank Dolger can help someone else, so we can hire another showrunner, and we can kind of step back a bit further. I don't know. But...
And then we get a last season that resembles True Blood's last season. Train wreck.
Yeah, we won't speak of True Blood. So in any case, I think there's room for Arianne to be introduced, but I think she's going to lose a lot of the material then.
Yeah, she's going to basically have
I think if she's introduced, it's specifically because they decided we're going to have that story element. And if she's not introduced, it may mean that they're dropping that story element entirely, which is actually a pretty big drop, because it's something that George has foreshadowed from the 2nd book.
Yeah.
So it's a big change, and we'll discuss that maybe
when we get to it.
But in any case, I think there's room for her to be added. I don't know that she will.
I'm very, very dubious.
Man, I'm certain that she's not being cast this season. I think we got all the Dornish characters.
Because, to be honest, I think they'll probably just use one of the Sand Snakes for that role.
They could. It depends. I don't know. It doesn't feel satisfactory to me.
No, it doesn't.
But, and again, it's this superficiality where, like, to me, the real core of that stuff is the family.
Actually, maybe they'll cast Elia and use her, since she has been mentioned.
Elia's hand?
Yeah. On the other hand, maybe that would be too confusing to have a character named Elia when they had a character named Elia mentioned.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. But like, yeah, I don't know. I'm
since
conflicted.
Elia figures in that plotline.
Yes,
anyway,
well, I'm just bothered by. I mean, I just think, like, what are they going to have in Dorne that will make it a 10th as sort of thematically sort of.
Oh, thematically, because I was going to say what we're going to have in Dorne is going to make it as 10th as good, and then they're going to say tits, but. I mean, that's
thematically strong, because I mean, A Feast for Crows. I mean, people detract on it on my favorite point of views on it, or it took too many years, or it's a little too cerebral. And I love the fact that it's so thematically rich, and it's so deep in a lot of ways. Some of the deepest sort of real themes of what George wants to say are in that book, or sort of highlighted. It ties it all together. It makes it a more internal book. It makes it a...
It is. I mean, I just reread it, and it is incredibly internal, so it is a challenge to adapt the material.
I don't know if anyone is watching Rectify. It's a show I heartily recommend. It's a beautiful show, and it's a very internal show about a man who was on death row, who was accused of a horrible murder, and after many years after, evidence comes out to turn that over. And he's released, and he's trying, after years from being a teenager to now an adult, isolated in sort of solitary confinement, waiting to die. He's suddenly out in the world. And how does he cope with a world that's changed? And even the question, like, did he do it? Because it's not actually answered. It's a beautiful little show, and it's a beautiful sort of character study, and it's full of themes. And I think...
Yeah, well, Game of Thrones isn't the
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones would people accept a season of a show that became much more a study of characters and themes and less about blood and guts and sex? Not that there isn't blood and guts and sex and big shocking twists.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I think. It's like True Blood. Like, no one was going to be interested in True Blood becoming a show about sort of the deep thematics.
On the other hand, we saw what happened when they, after season, were just turning up the weird.
Yeah.
Then they've got into their last season.
Yeah.
Train wreck.
Or you know, a show, a better one is probably, I think I would say in that respect, is Dexter. Because that was a show that was able to do some, I mean, even late into its run, I mean, with the Trinity Killer, fantastic season of that show. And it's not like the first season, it's not the second, fourth season, I think.
I don't know.
And then they kind of went the wrong way, and they sort of sealed the deal. On the other hand, it went 8 years, so that's pretty good for a network show or a cable show.
Yeah.
But it was not a sterling end.
No.
So for me, it's sort of, I feel strongly like the stuff that I love about A Feast for Crows and that many others love, and you know, the critics who hailed George, you know, America's Tolkien on the strength of that novel. They read that novel and they said, "Wow." Yeah. So I just want to say, there's a lot of people who admire it, and I think they admire it for very good, sound reasons. And I'm concerned that a lot of that stuff is disappearing, and instead, it will be sort of status quo with the show, where they will do the same stuff that they've done before in the same fashion, and they won't really stretch and they won't really try.
Because it is very much a kind of a breath between A Storm of Swords has, you know, the biggest twists and shocks, and it's a very, everything kind of comes crashing together in A Storm of Swords. It's massive.
Yeah.
So much happens. After that,
you can't have the same thing right after.
You need to, and that's all of Feast for Crows is an aftermath, and it's processing, and you need that. You can't just go from action beat to action beat.
No, I don't think so either.
And the story needs room to breathe, and all of Feast for Crows is the story breathing, really.
So by introducing new areas, they are showing aftermath. They are, like for Doran, they are clearly going to touch on the aftermath of that. It's very obvious, so that's right. But I'm just
they're doing it.
It's how we're doing it. It's because I don't see the same potential for the themes and the richness of characters and the family tensions coming out with that set of characters that they've cast, and not for Arianne. I just find it really difficult to see how they're going to transfer that.
I mean, you might think that, oh, well, they're actually casting and focusing on, you know, Oberyn's daughter. So obviously that more important is his daughter, so you can have a more immediate. But the fact is that having Arianne's sort of perspective on it, because at least the way we see it, and at least the way she characterized, I mean, they're all very much just out for vengeance. That's sort of the only thing that Oparei and Nymeria and Taini are about in the book. They are out for vengeance. They're not really thinking
long term.
You know, they all got something of Oberyn, but what those three didn't get was much of his brains, at least. That seemed to have gone all to Sorella. Sorella is the smart one. Sorella is the one who thinks before she acts, actually, and probably still has, you know, an edge to her, but Sorella is the one who makes sense. The other three...
Well, I mean, they have reasons to want revenge, but
they have, but
Arianne is for both personal reasons. I mean, she has her own complex relationship with her father.
Yeah.
There's questions about her relationship with her father and exactly what he feels about her, and the fact that there's this breakdown in communication between them actually plays an important role in what happens. And so you have this sort of, as I said, it all comes back to your fathers and their fathers before them.
And she sort of contrasts a lot of it with the relationship between the Sand Snakes and their father, and how the sort of freedom that she understands that she could never have the same freedom as the heir, but at the same time, she's clearly envious of the relationship that they had with her father.
Yeah, because she doesn't have that with Doran. He's a very different person from Oberyn, and she feels that she was a disappointment to him, basically. He's never said it as such, but it's a lack of saying it, and it's a lot about communication. It's really beautiful, I think, as just an interpersonal drama.
Yeah.
between these characters, and like I said, he carries it out in.
I mean, it's interesting to compare something like with Cersei and Tywin, for
3
example.
chapters basically, but really 4 chapters. We'll say all 4 chapters kind of really. There is a certain contrast of Cersei and Tywin, yes.
How a daughter relates to her father in this sort of situation, and
so Arianne missing is to me it, and who we're casting, who we're not casting, it says a lot to me.
What they're focusing on,
and it bothers me, and I'm concerned. I'm sure it'll look sumptuous. Filming in Spain should look gorgeous. One exception.
Yes.
One exception, but we'll save that.
No, we should. No, we won't save that.
Well, okay.
There's a rumor.
There is a rumor. We don't know.
No, we don't know for sure. There's a rumor, but I've gotten my rant ready just in case it's true, because actually I think that it would be very nice if people put enough pressure on them to change their mind, if that is possible, because it's possible they're going to be filming in what appears to be an actively used bull ring in Spain. And whether or not it's possible that they get this for free, a lot of the places they've been allowed to film for free, but it's still going to be publicity, and they are going to be either directly or indirectly supporting that arena and the sport that takes place in it. There's going to be people visiting it as a filming location. Might even be people who go and see a bullfight there, because that's where Game of Thrones filmed. And, there was this really beautiful show on HBO a few years back called Luck, about horse racing. And it ended up only getting 1 season because there were accidents in the filming of the 2nd season that led to 1 or 2 horses dying, I think.
3 horses died.
I think it was 1 during the 1st season and 2 during the...
At least one of those was a freak accident, as I recall. So
those were accidents.
Yeah.
It is, it happens in horse sports. I'm not going to say that all horse sports are perfectly... There's a lot of things that need to be better regulated and better taken care of, especially in racing and all of that. But the outrage about that was enough that the show was canned. And those were accidents. I mean, here they are purposefully going off and filming in a bull ring.
Yeah.
Possibly. Again, rumors, but how they can even entertain that idea is, for me, it's just...
If they had said they were going to film in a former bull ring, I think that would have been okay with
I
that.
would have been fine with that,
But one that's still actively used, I mean, the amount of bullfights in Spain I googled, have been falling year to year in the last decade. I think less than 500 last year.
I mean, there's not a lot of economy in it, that's the thing. And this means even more the fact that something like this would actually be very important for this bull ring.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Cuban, Cuban American, but I obviously Spain is sort of the origin, the ancestral country, the ancestral country, and I've always been very interested in Spanish culture, and I've as a historical artifact, as a historical tradition, I think it's fascinating bullfighting, but it should, in my mind, it should remain a part of history. It shouldn't be part of today.
I find the Colosseum and the gladiatorial games fascinating too, but I don't think we should have them.
Yeah, no.
We shouldn't be throwing Christians to the lions, probably.
No. So I too, I'm not... I am a bit bothered by it. Hopefully it's not true. Hopefully it's an incorrect rumor. But I just feel...
I mean, I just remember the fact that, they got a lot of flack in the 1st season for, filming on that nature reserve in Malta, where apparently some stuff was ruined by the filming. And you'd think they would think twice about filming in a bull ring.
Yeah, I see.
It's because, I can only imagine that people will react to it. At least I hope people will react to it, because...
I mean, it's a place for
animal abuse.
Yeah. It's animal cruelty, animal abuse. It's Osuna is the place, and it's bull ring is the one rumored to be used, and it's been used for about a century. So that's a century of bulls being slowly bled to death for the entertainment of a crowd, and then killed, often not very cleanly, slow, agonizing death sometimes.
Horses being gored.
Horses being gored. Less of an issue now in Spanish bullfighting, admittedly. But in South America, Central America, we're still horses are often still not wearing any protection. It can be, there are some videos out on the web that will give you nightmares about what can happen at these bullfights. Even in Spain, obviously, generally now these days people look at the ones, I guess, where it's a bullfighter being gored, and and people kind of say, "Oh, justice."
Yeah. See, Senor, sometimes the bull wins.
Yes. Okay. So, in any case, there's things about it that I find troubling, and I hope it's not true.
Yeah.
I hope it's wrong, and if it isn't wrong, I hope that maybe people will actually say something, and I mean, even in Spain, I mean, there are lots of protests in Spain. I think Catalonia has banned it entirely, or at least the sort of the blood sport version of it.
Yeah. I'd be happy if they moved to the Minoan variety.
Well, we've seen. I mean, they're in various. I think in France and also I think in Mexico, they have a sort of. I think Mexico. They have a version where you have the bullfighter using his cape and showing off his ability and his skill, but they don't go wearing down the bull with bleeding it to death and so on. It stabbing it and so on. That's more acceptable. I'm sure there are people who say even
it's still probably stressful
and so on. But at least the thing's not being deliberately injured repeatedly until it dies. And I know there are fans from Spain who feel quite differently. Who will say, "Oh, the bulls are bred for this. This is what they want to do in life." No, come on.
Yeah.
They're
I don't think you can breed anyone for having spears stabbed into you and thinking that's handy.
Yeah, I'm sure people used to say about bear baiting, "Oh, the dogs we use are bear baiting, or they're bred for this. They'll be so sad. They'll pine away without the chance to test their mettle against the bear." Well, no, not really. So I understand as a tradition. I understand as a part of the culture. I understand, but there are a lot of things that used to be part of our cultures that aren't anymore because we know better now. Witch burning,
for example.
There's a lot of things we know about. So
it'd be nice if
I just think people should realize that a blood sport on an animal, where the whole point is watching. Yes, the skill of a matador, but no matador. I mean, the name itself is, the bull killer. I don't agree with it, and I hope it's not true, and I hope they are considering it, I hope they reconsider it. There must be bull rings that are no longer used, but maybe preserved for historical reasons, whatever. I would suggest they look at those.
Yes, I suppose they can't go and get an old Roman arena. That'd probably be a little...
I wonder if there are any. I don't know if there are any old Roman colosseums or whatever still, or arenas still present in Spain. I wouldn't be surprised. I recall we saw that Roman bridge out in...
Obviously, whether you can do that in a safe way that doesn't damage the monument.
No, true. That's another question. But
I mean, I know there are amphitheaters and or theaters in Greece that are used still, but that's a bit different than a film.
All right, so that was a tangent, and let's go on now. That ended Doran, and we expressed. So
we have a couple of characters left too. I think.
So let's go to the east first. Enzo Cilenti as Yezan, an extremely wealthy slave trader before Daenerys outlawed the slave trade. Now that's an interesting one. Yezan is a character introduced in Dance of Dragons, or a character named Yezan, who is called the Yellow Whale. Yeah. He is extremely obese, and he's yellow because, well, that's because of an illness, a plague, a disease that he picked up from Sophoros, the southern continent, which is a plague-ridden place. And it's killing him, and it's clearly, I guess, has caused issue of liver and kidney function.
Is it supposed to be basically, what is that disease called that makes you go a bit yellow?
I forget.
Yes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes. Gulsot in Swedish, but I can't remember the...
I mean, I know it came from what, cirrhosis of the liver, right? But I don't know what disease could cause it. But anyways, he's
actually, that makes your skin... yellow.
And he is Yunkish. He is not from Marine. So that's the first thing. Actually, I kind of wonder,
I think you looked up the actor, and he does not look like a whale, yellow or
No,
otherwise.
Enzo Cinti is I guess a British actor of Italian origin, or maybe Italian actor. I don't quite know, but he doesn't look. He's not. And I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, well, is he even Yunkish, or is he a native Myronese?
Yeah.
They may have just borrowed the name.
Yeah.
Not a lot to say about this. Obviously,
they could be doing something very different and just
they're doing
mixing.
I think they're going to do a lot of the same stuff, but they may be using. They may feel that we need additional characters to do it with. Yezen could be as a contrast to his Dar, for example, as a different approach among the flavors. I don't know. He could be Yunkish. Well, I mean, of course, they did this whole thing where they're supposed to settle Yunkai by sending people off. So they may be cutting some of this stuff.
Yeah.
They could actually be cutting a fairly significant portion of Dany's storyline in A Dance of Dragons, which would be kind of interesting. Because that's not the aspect I would have expected them to cut. But maybe.
I mean, certainly given the fact that they are, speaking of that potential film near Bullring, that is probably for Dany's second to last chapter in A Dance of Dragons.
Yeah, we will not spoil that. We'll discuss. But yeah, so it's.
But they're getting through probably most of her story. Except
a good portion.
The last chapter.
A good portion of her story. That's Yezen. Nothing really a lot to say. No. I don't know if he's Yunkish, then that says one thing. If he's Myronese, that says quite another. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And I guess we'll just do this one. The High Sparrow, played by Jonathan Pryce. Now this is an actor a lot of people know.
It's one of those people you know that you've seen somewhere.
Seen a lot of things, and so it's fantastic.
He's been in this and that.
Fantastic catch for them. Not really exactly my image of the High Sparrow from the novels.
But I saw some pictures of him that he can do that intensity that I'm expecting from the zealous intensity that this character should have.
So he and this is one of the important elements of Feast for Crows that the High Sparrow is sort of a part of, which is a devout and pious man. The High Sparrow came to King's Landing to serve those forgotten by much of the world, the poor, the downtrodden, the infirm, and quickly amassed a large following. His fellow believers have swarmed over the city, administering to the lowest and decrying the corruption of the highest. So you have a little bit of a religiously driven
peasant uprising, or
not peasant uprising, but a sort of rallying of the lower classes against the suffering that they've suffered at the hands of the nobility and their wars.
And also, this is one of the things that if they drop a lot of what Feast for Crows is about, that
could lose.
That loses something, because seeing the suffering of how the wars between the nobility have affected, the commoners of Westeros is definitely one of the themes of Feast for Crows. There's a couple of characters who are traveling around and seeing the destruction and the horrible things that have been inflicted on people, just sort of as civilian casualties. And I don't know that we're getting a lot of those angles.
The question is what they do with Brienne, because Brienne is the other character and Jaime less so in A Feast for Crows, though. I think one character that he really kind of gives a look at, and he kind of vaguely discusses it, but mostly I think it's Brienne. I don't know what they're doing, so it's a really good question. But having the High Sparrow certainly means that a significant part of Cersei's storyline is happening, and I mean it's from the rumors such. I mean they're kind of going whole hog with the Cersei storyline, I think, which is interesting because issues of Lena Headey aside.
I just the rumor being that they're casting someone for young Cersei and going for she has some
dreams,
some flashbacks sort of in, and just the fact that
now
when they had so many important ones before, all of a sudden they decide to do it now. That's what pisses me off.
The rumor's true.
If the rumor's true.
But in any case, and our issues of how in her portrayal of Cersei aside, I mean, I think A Feast for Crows, Cersei becomes a point of view character in A Feast for Crows. And I think it's very insightful and it's really interesting. And I think it's not something that sort of makes her a redeemed character or whatever at all.
No.
Because George has said she's not a nice person.
No.
She's not particularly clever.
I mean, those chapters, if anything, I think they, for me anyway, they mostly destroy any lingering sympathy that I had.
I don't feel the same way at all. I feel a lot of sympathy for the things that happened to make her the way she is. But the fact is the way she is a large part a psychological issue with her.
Well, the thing is, I mean, yes, you see that it wasn't easy having Tywin as a father, without a doubt. And there are some little things where you sort of see glimpses of a young girl who wasn't completely screwed up. But then...
Well, she was always screwed up, I think, actually. But what you do see is that you can see the glimpses of the person who screwed up, in part because the frustration of life under Tywin and don't hit me, under in a patriarchal society with very strong, very strong misogynistic tendencies. Okay, it's absolutely true. She has been crushed by the misogyny of Westeros, and she has taken on that misogyny. She is a misogynist herself. She hates her sex. She hates women, and she hates her own sex, and she thinks that it's made her weak when she should be strong, or she should be the one with the sword. She should be the one to be able to rule.
I mean, I guess I suppose it really comes back to the fact that Cersei has identity issues.
She has some severe identity issues.
And it's sort of it's highlighted for her because she had a twin.
Oh, absolutely. That's a
because there is one line in A Feast for Crows where she says, well, you know, she would sometimes dress up as Jaime, and she thought it was fascinating how everyone, including her father, treated her so very differently.
Yes.
When she passed herself off as Jaime.
This is when they were prepubescent and so on, and they looked almost mirror images to one another, basically.
I guess it's... For me, it's just hard, even with that, to sort of... When you contrast the things that she does, it's like, you had your reasons for... Because, I mean, I think that she has a mental illness of some sort. She's a sociopath.
She has, at the very least, narcissistic
and sociopathic tendencies, I think. And that, coupled with the fact that she could see that, well, someone who looks almost like me is being treated very differently, got her very screwed up on her identity. But then, looking at the things that she does, it's like, okay, you have your reasons, but you're a horrible, horrible, horrible person.
No, there are people who can suffer through life and who manage by strength of will, by the grace of their personalities, to kind of rise above it and not get crushed.
I mean, it's not like every woman in Westeros suffers from it.
No, but because that's part. The other thing is by having Tywin and having there's this constant pride and this constant we're the best, and she kind of like, if we're the best, why am I being treated as a second fiddle?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I not being given? I mean, I'm smarter than Jaime. I'm definitely not a crippled, ugly dwarf like the younger brother. Why am I not the apple of my father's eye? Why is Jaime? And that injustice, it has sort of the pride and the need to be lauded and the most important person. Because
but I mean, she wants more than is reasonable.
Yeah, we're getting off on it. Because the thing is, our next video, or maybe our next video, I'm not sure.
What are you planning in between?
We promised the one about the others, discussing the others and our theories about them and so on. But another video is about Cersei and about someone else, and it's one that we're planning and working on because it's touches on some touchy stuff. So I think some of this is leaking in from that, from our discussions, because we're kind of gathering our thoughts. So Cersei's an important character, and I think she's an interesting character who isn't likable. I don't think you're supposed to like her.
No.
George doesn't like her. He finds her interesting and I think he can
put,
sympathize with some of her things, but he wouldn't want to have her over for dinner.
Yeah, I mean, I find that, rereading Feast for Crows, I really found it hard to sympathize with her, even as in I can see where you're coming from, I can see where you got screwed up, but the things you're doing are so unforgivable.
No, I mean, get a grip. You want to say, like, get a grip, look, think, disassociate yourself from the traumas, and just look at the traumas you're inflicting on yourself and others now.
Yeah.
And she's blind, she can't see it.
No, she's really, really blind.
Yeah, she can't see what she's doing, and that's it's Tywin's fault, and it's the society's fault, and it's her fault.
Yeah.
In various measures. So yeah, that'll be an interesting video. And
because she has this odd combination of an inflated sense of ego and then this entitlement issues that are unfulfilled entitlement issues, sort of.
Yeah,
so it's a weird.
Maybe an inferiority complex, really, would be the right way to say. But she feels
together with an inflated ego.
Yes,
okay.
Like she's wrestling. Part of her, the misogynistic part of her, is wrestling with the fact that a woman, the thing. It's complicated. It's very complicated. I think it's marvelous, and I think if they do touch on it, it'll be really interesting. But at the same time,
need another actress for that.
Yeah, the last season kind of makes it plain that this Cersei and that Cersei are completely different characters.
No, I mean, I cannot imagine with the whitewashing that they have done for Cersei that she is going to do even a tenth of what she does in A Feast for Crows.
Well, it even looks like they're getting out of their way, of course, to kind of make sure that some of her worst decisions are mitigated by, she had no choice.
Yeah.
But anyways, Jonathan Pryce, great choice for the actor. High Septon, or High Sparrow, sorry.
Yeah.
Will be interesting. And that's the casting news. Yeah. And we have more videos planned, as you can see. But I think this has now gone on long enough, and we need to open some windows and get the fan on because we're melting. We're melting. So until then, enjoy.